Hello and welcome. You are watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm your host Ade Darami, and here to go through 10 big stories from the week, I have friend and colleague Mahmoud Mboj. Mr. Mboj, welcome to the program.
Cheers, Ade. Glad to be here.
Always glad to have Mr. Mboj here, and also glad to have Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. And we never presume that those watching have been watching from day one, so a quick summary what it's all about. It's called The Week in Review for a very good reason. We take 10 big stories from the week just gone by and we kick them around, deep dive into some, not so much deep dive into others. Okay, so what have we got on the menu? Well, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM as people tend to call it, has just ended in Samoa in the Pacific, and the Gambia had an interest there. I won't spoil it for you. And also there's been a former minister of petroleum, energy minister, had to face the National Assembly about a $30 million petrol deal that caused some problems a year or so back. Also, Gambia's first maternal pods have been installed at Kanifing General Hospital. We'll go into that. Also, if I said to you that the National Assembly here in the Gambia was male-dominated, I'd be stating the obvious, wouldn't I? Yes, I would. Well, we've spoken to a female National Assembly member, and she tells us what's it like being in the midst of all those men. Also, we go abroad. Egypt has been declared malaria-free after many, many years of trying. And also one that got us all excited, the Independence Stadium. Is it ready? Is it not ready? You'll find out more. These are some of the stories on this week's program. So let's get things kicking, shall we? Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting just ended in Samoa, in Apia, Samoa, in the Pacific Islands. And for some, there was excitement and there was an appointment, and one might say there was a disappointment. But I won't spoil it for you. Have a look at this clip and we'll delve into it when we come back.
If we all go forward together with an unwavering faith, a high courage, and a quiet heart, we shall be able to make of this ancient Commonwealth, which we all love so dearly, an even grander thing.
The Commonwealth's comparative advantage remains its young and vibrant population, creating digital jobs for women and young people should remain at the top of the agenda this year.
We heard Paul Kagame there, President of Rwanda, one of the newcomers to the Commonwealth. But at the top there, I said there was an appointment and there was disappointment, in case anybody doesn't know. The appointment was Shirley Ayoko Bochwe of Ghana, made the new Commonwealth Secretary General, and there we heard Patricia Scotland, the outgoing one. And the disappointment, of course, is that of Dr. Mamadou Tangara, our Foreign Minister, who had thrown his hat into the ring, but it was not to be, Mr. Mboj.
Absolutely. You know, women, the appointment of women to these positions is a bit like buses, isn't it? I think Baroness Scotland was the first.
Was the first.
And suddenly a second, you've got a second too, another woman.
Sure.
Absolutely, yes. We had a stake in it, we had an interest in it, and some of us we were gunning for Dr. Tangara, and unfortunately didn't make it. Yes, but sort of once we watched the debate they had, chaired by Zana Badawi, one could get a sense, interesting. None of them had any radical agenda.
Quite.
That was why when Baroness Scotland was talking, listing the qualities and values, he said, what about the vision for our time? Yeah. I think maybe that's really what is needed here. But you can see why Shirley won. Highly experienced, even within the Commonwealth administration. She's got the political aspects, foreign minister, we'll know all of that, but I think perhaps the administrative stuff, the insider knowledge.
That's right, yeah.
Of how
the system works.
How it works.
Yeah.
I think perhaps maybe that edged it a bit in her favor.
Well, indeed, and you talked about the vision thing, that, what did they have the vision? Because as the conference ended, of course, one of the big talking points was that mainly led by the Caribbean nations, this whole thing about reparations for slavery. In fact, if one opens the British newspapers, it's full of it. They say, how dare these people? None of us were alive. They're really quite furious that it's being brought up. But perhaps it's a good thing that it's been brought to the fore.
Absolutely, and it was a blow to the UK, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
Because they said quite clearly that reparations, we don't do reparations, and
they
it wasn't
didn't
on the
want-
agenda.
They didn't want it brought up.
They didn't
Absolutely.
want it at all. But this is it. Maybe this will be what we will remember. This Chogom 4.
Yes.
Maybe it is the beginning of an historic process.
Right.
At least they've agreed, to talk about it.
Yep.
That is the key. It's never happened before.
That's right.
So possibly this could be the historic thing, as it
And
were,
it
of Chogom
needed a shake-up
2024.
because
yes.
people have been comparing this to a kind of talking shop. In fact, I circulated something from one of the Maldives independent channels, which says our Prime Minister has departed for the Commonwealth talking shop. And that was their view of it. So something like this was out of the blue, in the sense that Britain had said, we'd rather you didn't bring it up. And they thought that, having said that, people wouldn't. But I think the mood had been building that it was inevitable that they would bring it up. In fact, had they dropped it, I think people would have said, oh, you cowards, you were going to bring this up. Why did you drop it? Just because Britain said they won't like it or pay any attention to it.
Absolutely. It was always about cash, wasn't it? When Starmer said, no, there was no money, nothing was said about money, they haven't agreed anything. But again, the proponents will tell you that there are different forms
And just
of
as in our
reparations.
TRRC,
Absolutely,
when we had
yeah.
reparations in the
Yeah.
TRRC here, we said all along,
Yes.
it wasn't just about cash. There are
Absolutely.
other ways that one can disperse reparations. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is it. So we will look into it. The talking shop bit, one can understand, but again, you also understand that given its history, given its nature, really what can it do? Because once you want to go for certain radical policies and stuff,
Right.
then you might risk splitting the group.
This is true.
It's huge.
This is true.
You
And,
know
and,
what I mean?
and they've
And
welcomed
that's
new
it.
members, Gabon
Yes,
and Togo.
Gabon,
I mean,
Rwanda,
Gabon and
absolutely.
Togo, this was their first time
coming in.
coming in.
Absolutely.
So it's quite
So
remarkable.
that's it. So it's changing.
Yes, yes.
Really.
And Kagame kind of hinted at it, that, this whole thing about it's a youthful population across the whole of the Commonwealth, and this is where we should be focusing our attention and our energies in terms of, how do we find jobs for these our youthful population.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
How can it be a proper platform, a solid, big voice platform for just causes,
Yeah, quite.
humanitarian causes?
Yes, yes.
How can the better off within the group help those who are right at the bottom? How do we increase trade, for instance? So stuff like that. There are many areas in which they can. It's never going to be fair. You know what I mean?
The world
you
isn't.
really can't compare.
No.
I mean, qualitatively, what we went through, you really cannot pay us back in cash.
Quite, absolutely.
That was
not.
really completely priceless.
That-
You
that's
cannot
right.
price that.
Absolutely.
It's just that because of that experience, it's had so much bearing on the development.
It's still there.
It's still there. So what is it we can do, at least to lift us up?
Yeah, quite.
You're not going to take us where we want to go. There, we're going to take ourselves there. But how do you help giving that, contributors to really what's going on?
If Kemi Badenoch ever becomes PM, she'll kick it into the long
Long
grass.
grass.
She's already said these people are trying to make us ashamed of our past. So I went on her Twitter page and said, doubtless you want us to celebrate slavery rather than condemn it.
Unbelievable.
seriously, yeah.
And it just tells you the sort of world we're living in. Parents from Nigeria.
Yeah, quite.
Can you imagine? But that are very right-wing Tory. But why not?
Yeah, quite.
See?
Yeah.
Why not? To my mind.
Yeah,
So absolutely, just the complexity of our world today, the world we're living in.
Because she's grown up with a completely different experience.
Different
So of course you can
experience,
kind of bash it
education,
away.
sensibility,
Yeah,
all
quite.
of these things.
Quite.
So they all matter.
And
so
she's
this
saying
is
the right
key.
things to be elected leader of that particular party.
and that's it. So whatever programs you have, it just depends on the government
of
of the time, of the day, what it will do. So there's just so much, but yet
Nonetheless,
there's a huge area,
Sure.
there are certain spaces that they can occupy and sort of, make their own.
Yeah, let's see. Nonetheless, I think most people said it was a success. Even the weather held off, and then it rained and rained as everybody was departing, which was quite almost as if they'd planned it that way.
Yeah.
But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to story number 2. There was a time not so long ago when you went around and petrol stations were telling you, sorry, no petrol. And then came this whole kerfuffle about this deal that had brought in petrol that hadn't been distributed, and it got very confusing. And now the person who had to stand before the National Assembly to address it was not the current energy minister, but the previous one. And he wasn't that pleased about it. Have a look, have a listen.
Honorable, let me explain to you. PURA does not set standards. PURA does not set regulations. Regulations are developed by the minister. Standards that are applicable in the sector is developed by the Standards Bureau and put in a regulation. And all PURA does is comply with the provisions of the regulation to regulate the sector in terms of quality and quantity. After having received information from one of the traders, that is PSTV at the time, about alleged shortage in Gum Petroleum, and they indicated that if this report was true, as trader, we would end up in a scenario where the traders would no longer would have no other choice than to stop all dealings with Gum Petroleum, including HFO, to the country. And also, as I said, explain that because the Malian that were coming here were being extorted by individuals.
The Malians that were coming here were being extorted by individuals, Mr. Mboj. This was a very murky business, wasn't it? Those of us who drive can remember when you drive past petrol station after petrol station, as you looked at your indicator getting lower and lower, only to be told, sorry, no essence, no anything. And it was quite, and now we're trying to get to the bottom of this murky deal.
That's it, and the queues, and it was just generally awful to get a taxi. We can't forget that. Yes, it is important that we get to the bottom of it.
Well, indeed, and that's what they're trying to do.
Really, yes.
So they're not questioning the current Minister of Petrol and Energy, they're questioning the previous one who was there when it all happened, to try and, but it got a bit tetchy at times, the exchange, when they asked, can you tell us the remit of your office as given by the President? He said, go and ask the President. They were not best pleased, but then he sort of said, no, I shouldn't have said that. He said, what I should have said is it's confidential, which kind of raised a whole thing. So they kind of got sidetracked, including people thinking, well, your appointment as a minister is confidential and your terms of reference are confidential. In which country or what planet? So I'm not sure how he came up with that one, but it kind of got sidetracked, and a lot of the sort of discussion ended up being about that. But for those of us, as I said, who drive cars, what we wanted to know was what led to this scenario where, we were not given. And then, of course, you had him having to correct the National Assembly members who thought PURA had certain roles and responsibilities or duties, and he correctly put them on the right path, said, no, this is what they do. They don't make policy. We do.
Absolutely.
Government does. they enforce and so on. Yeah.
Absolutely. He was touchy there.
Yeah. I think touchy is the right word.
For some reason, they touched
They touched a nerve. Yeah. I think because there were sort of hints that something underhand had happened in the deal, and he felt that was kind of being implied by in some of the questioning. I think that's why he was somewhat touchy.
But what are we talking about here? Apparently, 36,000 metric tons.
36,000 metric tons.
And
once it was sold,
$30 million.
So it's big money.
Like that. It is big money.
Yeah.
So we must look into it. And as a leader of an organization, you don't lose your cool.
No.
That's not for the
because the NAMs were doing their role,
doing
and he
job.
should have, you're brought before this committee to answer questions.
Yes,
That's
even
it.
if you think that they're not asking intelligent questions and whatever,
Educate
still
them.
educate them.
Sure.
So you must sort of retain your cool. We must know really what happened,
Sure.
who did what,
Yeah,
and then afterwards. Justice should take its course. Even though we
it-
say this all the time, but
This is
we
hardly ever
don't get
happens.
it as much as we would have liked.
Well, this is it. So even though he answered the questions at the end, I'm not sure everybody was satisfied. So I suspect we'll be revisiting this one
That's it.
somewhere
And
down the
you'll
line.
have other witnesses, and then you
That's
piece
right.
things
You put the
together.
whole thing together.
That's it.
That's right.
Just arrange the jigsaw puzzle.
Well, absolutely. But the minister's evidence was crucial, very important.
Absolutely,
Yeah, sure.
absolutely. And he was the one there at the time. That is why you
that's
expect him
right.
to come and answer for that. These
Exactly.
things.
He's now Minister of
He's
Tourism.
now
of
Minister
course.
of Tourism. That's it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you for that, Mr. Mbuj. And now something that was a first here in the Gambia, a maternal pod. I hear you ask, what's a maternal pod? Let this story tell you. Have a
The
look.
pod has 3 components which include scrubbing room, operating room, and a 5-bedded recovery room. It is important to note that all these components are equipped with state-of-art equipment and gadgets, which our staff were also trained on for safe and smooth service delivery.
Every single life lost is too many. Sadly, the loss of mothers and babies is never far from home in any community in our country. But today, there is hope.
Mr. Mbuj, as he said there, maternal deaths, the rate has gone down. There have been improvements in the Gambia, but I think as one speaker there said, every life lost is one too many. So the pod is the first ever, and of course we hope that it will be rolled out. But we've seen the equipment there. We've heard that the staff have been trained to use it properly. Let's hope they do.
Absolutely, and the people responsible for bringing this here, Horizon Trust, the founder,
Yes,
Professor James Ndao,
Oh, yeah.
Gambian of Aberdeen, OBE, if I may add.
Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely well known in urological circles. He's a surgeon. So absolutely fantastic idea. And during his speech at the ceremony, he did spoke about women bleeding during pregnancy and childbirth.
That's right.
Were massive. Absolutely, this is the sort of thing that we're really looking for.
Indeed.
Bringing here technology to help us in various sectors so that we can up our game,
Well,
our
this is
performance,
true.
our delivery for the people, isn't it?
It's true, and for a long time, it's the kind of thing that if you didn't have it, and it meant a matter of life or death, it was a case of death. And these are the sorts of things, as you say, we need them here because for other things like that or in that kind of bracket, we're having to send people abroad, even if it's only next door to Senegal or further afield to Ghana and so on. The more things like this we get, the better. And of course, as I said, the first ever maternal pod is this one at Kanifing General Hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we need more of them, don't we?
Sure.
Because of the gap. We all understand the technological gap here.
Sure.
So fantastic. This is another way that people in the diaspora can help.
I was going to come to that.
Exactly what it is.
I was going to come to that because we hear people in the diaspora saying, I would like to help, I would like to do this. Well, this is it. This is the perfect example. And one of the reasons why we were delighted to highlight it is exactly to kind of prod people in that way, say, look, this is something, a Gambian is behind this, and look what they've delivered, a life-saving, life-changing facility.
So you look at certain really vulnerable sectors that really need help, that are on their knees. Sure. How can we come together here and what can we do? That's the first bit, this is with this one, but there's another bit, and we don't have a culture for that. Now, how do we sustain this?
This is it.
How do we maintain it? It's easy. We've seen it so many times. Come up with an idea, opening the thing, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, instead of going up, somehow the trajectory seems to be going down.
You go and you see them pointing to materials and equipment, and they said, oh, that equipment there, we haven't been able to use it for 3, 4 years. Every time I see that, my heart sinks. Yeah.
But this is our problem.
Yeah.
You want to use high tech, but in many ways you don't have an industrial base.
This is it.
Isn't
we're
it?
talking
At
there in that
all.
insert about state-of-the-art
You see stuff
equipment,
like that.
which it is, because it's as modern as anything you'll find in a Western hospital.
So the repairs, the
Yeah,
maintenance,
yeah,
and
go
that sort of thing, you have to wait for this, wait for that. You see how long we wait for anything. The slow bureaucracy is very, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so
you know, dragging, as Linda Peters once put it, we're dragging our slippered feet. You hear that when we walk,
yeah, quite,
that
yeah,
sort of
quite,
thing.
quite.
That's really how we work.
Yeah, quite, yeah.
You know, how we walk is how we work,
Right.
as it were.
Sure.
So this is really the issue. Fantastic idea, but there's another element there that can make it really radical.
Sure.
We can run it for a long time.
is
It's
it.
working, it is sustainable, and then you add more onto it. Not that it comes and dies,
This is
then you
it.
bring another one,
Well,
it
this
comes
is-
and
yeah,
dies.
quite.
That sort of thing.
And that would turn off
Yeah.
people who might be potential
And
benefactors.
We're used
Yeah,
to
yeah.
seeing stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know,
We
how
need
do
to- we need to stop
sustain-
that.
Yeah, sustainability now. That's really
It's a
key.
big problem. Well, thank you for that. And we wish this maternal pods every success, because it's such a vital thing. And story number 4, if you go to the National Assembly here in the Gambia, you look around, you look, and eventually you'll see some women. But it's a very male-dominated place. And recently, one of our colleagues spoke to one of the few female National Assembly members. Here's a clip. Have a look.
The National Assembly is a battleground dominated by male names.
That is relevant to health. They must be coming to that. Deduction of salary. Today, if the minister's salary is deducted, that will be very painful to the minister.
No, you don't do it that way. Parliament, you don't shout.
Notwithstanding the high male dominance, Honorable Amikoli, representative for Fonyi Berefet, survives and thrives.
Does not mean that the second presidents were taking the money itself.
Ami's journey to the National Assembly is because of her life-changing assignment as an agricultural extension worker. For nearly a decade, she dedicated all her time supporting women farmers, helping them register massive growth from their crop production.
Then that was the time when women requested for me to become their MP. They want me to stand for them as far as I am helping them at the constituency level. But when they told me at the beginning, I was afraid. I told them that I don't have anybody to assist me, checking my family background. We are poor. My father, all of my parents are late. Then I have only my mother. So who will help me? They told me that we will help you.
Out of 58 members, the National Assembly has 5 female names, 3 elected and 2 nominated.
Re-elected, 2 nominated, and of course she is one of the elected. And we heard her journey there, from helping agricultural workers to them saying to her, you should be our voice at the National Assembly. And lo and behold, she very much is.
Absolutely, and she said that she was afraid.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, the critics then were saying that, oh, you can't speak English.
Yeah, quite.
Stuff like
Yeah,
that. She faced a lot,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
before she got there. Then I said, oh, come on, you can't speak English. So what?
So what?
You know, how many fluent idiocies have we heard?
Exactly.
Sometimes you sort of get this sort of inarticulate sense.
Well,
if you know what I mean. You
And
don't
hear
have to be.
people- you have people who have a great command
Absolutely.
of the English language,
But
and yet it doesn't mean they're talking
that's
sense
the
at all.
ideas. It's about ideas.
Absolutely.
Really.
And to come there with a passion, and you're representing a particular constituency, and I don't mean literally the constituency, I mean women and women farmers who they make such a great contribution to our society.
Yes, because of the grassroots experience. Remember with Obama as well, first the grassroots experience, the people that was really what propelled.
Totally.
So this is it, knowing the grassroots. They said, come on, we will back you, as she said there, and there they are. So we need movements like this.
This is it. And one of the reasons why when our reporter Usman Jatta suggested the story, I thought fantastic story, because it'll show, because there are so few women and there are other women who are scared of, let them hear her story and see that actually she did it, I can do it. And let that be the kind of inspiration, and that's why we did the story. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'll put it slightly differently, that people with a passion, really, to work with the grassroots.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Maybe these are the people that we want in decision-making bodies.
This is rather than the
That's
ones who
it.
set out wanting to be a career politician.
To be the career politician,
Yeah.
never been to the
Yeah,
so-called ordinary folk, never done anything with them
Right.
because of your so-called degree and experience and
Yeah.
office know-how, as it were, savviness. Then you think that you can lead people. It doesn't work like that. So people who really have a passion for that sort of thing, go for it.
Yeah.
It's important that we have your experience
Yeah, quite.
in when we're crafting our legislation.
Well,
you should be.
yeah.
We need that sort of thing.
This is
So
it.
this is it. So for that kind of person, yes, that's your model.
Absolutely,
Really.
absolutely, and I wish her all the best. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now up to story number 5, which will also take us to our midpoint in terms of stories. Independence Stadium. Is it going to be ready for the Scorpions' next game, which is in November? I won't spoil it for you. Let this clip tell you.
And government also got the frustration. That is why they had invested a lot. Over more than $300 million it has been spent at the Independence Stadium. And there are competing priorities for government. But, you know, they did that, and we want to thank them. Yesterday, I think I had about 3 to 4 phone calls with the permanent secretary, because there is a line of communication. There's a protocol. The permanent secretary, Minister of Youth and Sports, Marie Njai, and she's very much aware about the development.
Gambians are eager to support the Scorpions at home, a sentiment that the GFF General Secretary applauds. He remains optimistic that the Gambia will host matches in November.
Last night, I actually communicated to CAF. I sent a letter, because even for the inspection, the Football Federation will have to request it for the inspectors to come.
Mr. Mboj, the reason we wanted that interview and that clarification, of course, there had been celebration in the office when it was discovered there was a Facebook post on the ministry's own page saying that the stadium had been cleared, and that was then shared by the office of the president, and everybody thought, oh, this must make it official then. But as we heard, it's not quite, all things were not quite as they seemed.
I was among those who jumped with that
So
hooray,
was I.
not realizing that it was a bit premature.
So was I, yeah.
So this is it. It's just that they're optimistic, I think.
They are.
That they will be
given the all clear.
All clear to host our matches here.
Because it counts, really. I mean, having to play your home matches in Morocco. And by the way, that was another thing that we raised with them, because there'd been the kind of cynical comments. Oh, the reason you chose Morocco instead of Mauritania, Cabo Verde, or Dakar is because of the per diem is greater, and he kind of dealt with it, sort of. I'm not sure people will be convinced with the answer, but those countries are much nearer, and in fact it will be easier for Gambian fans to go and support in those countries, but we're playing all the way in Morocco, which lessens the number of fans even at our home games. But our stadium is banned, in case anybody's watching this and they don't know, from hosting international matches.
And I suspect that the rest of the world, really, we'll be looking at Gambia and Senegal. Fine, we cannot have it here, but to have it in Senegal, given the closeness, can you imagine that? Most of the rest of the world will be watching and saying, what's wrong
going
with
on?
these people? Why can't they come together? They must be laughing at us
Honestly.
when we go out and say, oh, we are brothers, we are this or that. That's just talk.
And then something like this we can't even play in
They should
their
have been much
stadium.
better for our fans to go. Sometimes the fans can be the 12th man on the pitch.
I mean, just
Isn't it?
even if Gambians didn't visit, the number of Gambians who live in Senegal would probably half fill the
This
stadium.
is just scandalous.
It really is.
It's
It really is.
unbelievable, really disgusting.
So fingers crossed that
Yes.
the November match will be played at the stadium.
Absolutely. And then just as we said with our previous story, we need to know, how did it come to this?
Yeah, quite.
At some point it was new. The maintenance, we don't do maintenance. Well,
Shame.
let us give good managers. This is about managerial skill. Some people are good at that.
Otherwise, we'll be in this position in 5 years' time.
So that's it. So we keep taking these institutions and giving them to people who really do not know how to manage.
Yeah, quite.
This is really what the problem is.
quite.
And then afterwards, all standards will start to plummet at a rate that you can't even believe. So this is the key. We will get it,
Sure.
Sooner or later.
It'll be shiny and new for a year.
Absolutely. Sooner or later we will get it.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, what?
Yeah, sure.
I think we must emphasize on this sustainability thing, this maintenance things, because we've seen that in the past, it really has been the bane of so much of what we do. Sure. Then you find yourself, you keep starting all over again.
Yes,
you see, this is really what the problem is. You keep starting all over again because you never maintain anything. How do you deal with that?
Oh, but we keep our fingers crossed, Mr. Mboj, that this time we'll get it right. But thank you for that. And at this point, we'll go for a break. And after the break, 5 more cracking stories. Don't go away. Join us after the break.
Introducing the Q-Smart and Q-Smart Plus, where innovation meets affordability. Capture life's precious moments with stunning clarity thanks to our high-resolution cameras. Enjoy uninterrupted performance with a fast processor and a long-lasting battery that keeps up with your day. The Q-Smart offers a 5.9-inch immersive display, powerful performance, and an all-day battery life, all for just $3,400. Plus get an incredible bundle of 15 gigabytes of data, 120 minutes of talk time, and 300 SMS absolutely free. Upgrade to the Q-Smart Plus featuring a faster processor and extended battery life and a larger 6.5-inch screen for just $4,000. With it, you receive a massive 30 gigabytes of data, 300 SMS, and 120 minutes of talk time completely free. All bundles are spread across a 3-month period. Don't miss out. Get your Q-Smart or Q-Smart Plus from QCell today. Discover the best in quality and value right here in the Gambia. Available at all QCell customer care centers across the country. For more information, call 111. QCell Senior Boss. We innovate, others follow.
Zainab! Zainab! Zainab, kai! Zainab! Kai! Yo, fooy dem naaj bu tàng bi looy daw
sama kaan gis nga moto bi taxaw na fi poste bi lay dawale nii ndax mun a yóbbante sama mbokk yu nekk Sénégal xaalis mu ci gaawee
Zeynab xanaa yow nekkuloo Gambia Zeynab kaay déglu ma xaral déglu ma wax la ma ne looy def yomb na soo amee sa Q Money mun ngaa yónnee ko amee Orange Money Sénégal xaalis mu dem si kalpeem bi Orange Money cullung from Q Money to Orange Money mu ne fa cullung
looy wax nii
waaw yomb na te gaaw na
lii de neex na fan laa mun a gaaw ndax def mun a def transaction
looy def mooy transaction bi loo ko def yomb na demal ci every Q Money agent nga jox leen seen xaalis nga cash in nga taxaw foo nekk noonu nga seen ko mu dem Orange Money Sénégal ci ko
nekkul fen si boor yi nekkul fen fii
ma ne kaay ma woon asalaamaaleykum Zeynab Q Money agent yaa ngi nii nag
agsi na
ñëw na
waaw nu mu gaawee
léegi nag soo bëggee yónnee Sénégal rek defal star 323 hash rek then dina la woon option bi foo yónnee Sénégal
lii daal neex na
yombal
te gaaw
Orange Money ak Q Money yombal nañ àdduna Sénal dem na
kay
Q Money rek
Q Money moo mun ko ko gis mu daw mbaa mu dal kawam moo mun
Q Money ndara na sino dimbade ko gonga no dimbade dem na
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darmi, as I was in the first half, and still across the room from me, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjections.
Yes,
and still doing the signing, we have Lamine Sonko. Now, anybody joining at this point, I always tell you that you've missed 5 cracking stories, but I don't want you to switch off. Why? Because you've got 5 cracking stories still to go, of course. Now, story number 6. We talk a lot about the Access to Information Act. It came into being in 2021, but it's still not been properly implemented. Why is that? Well, I went along to this conference during the week, and we'll discuss this after you watch this clip.
The Information Commission, in partnership with the Ministry of Information and the Gambia Press Union, as well as civil society and other stakeholders, will be meeting soon for the consolidation of the ATI implementation roadmap and its eventual validation. We will be engaging with stakeholders in getting the right structures, tools, processes, and systems in place as we conclude on our work plan. Once the Commission has key structures in place, you shall be kept abreast of developments through press conferences, press releases, and other media engagements.
Mr. Mbodj, Nene Magdo gave there, and as I said to her in a phone call this week, I said, this is a bit of an obsession of mine. And so I try and attend as many of these as I can. And one of the reasons is because when it works, and it works well, there's a lot of information that the public are entitled to get that you will only get when you make these sorts of requests about the workings of government. And until that is in place, then nothing can be done. So I mentioned it came into being in 2021, August 2021. His Excellency the President assented to the bill and it became an act. But it's not been implemented or operationalized, that word which I hate to say because I found it so difficult. You know, as she said, so the Information Commission, which she will head, and the Gambia Press Union are working on a roadmap. And I'm not giving away a secret here. The reason they're working on a roadmap was because at a previous event I attended, it was found out they were both working on separate roadmaps. And now they've decided to join forces and work on a combined one.
Absolutely, the organizational stuff we were talking about.
Indeed.
And when she was listing what they've got to do, my question is, okay, how long would it take to do that? Already, this must be, received the presidential assent in 2021.
Got the presidential assent. They've got a building.
Imagine. Yeah, so.
It's now being equipped in terms of computers and so on. They've recruited most of the personnel who will be there. The commissioners have been sworn in. So it's gradually getting there. And the reason this matters, in case anybody's watching and thinking, what's that got to do with anything? Well, if you make you can make a request already, because the law says it's an act, it's not a bill anymore. But if there's anything contentious about government refusing to give you the information that you think you're entitled to, and you dispute the reasons given, you have to appeal to the Commission. Now, unless the Commission is properly constituted and is sitting, they're not yet set up to start sitting over those appeals. And they have some teeth in terms of, you know, what the law allows them to do, but we can go into that later.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I hope that afterwards, can we challenge the Commission's decision in the courts?
We can.
We can.
Absolutely we can. Absolutely we can. That is the kind of the final stage. Because if the Commission takes a decision that the reason I'm pausing here and almost stuttering is because we don't have a tradition of doing that, because we think it might cost so on. But having said that, I think the Bar Association and others have said that should it come to that, they will offer their service pro bono. So you don't have to worry about the cost of challenging either, you know, a decision from the Information Commission.
This is really the key. How it's going to work, isn't it? We understand that they're training what, information officers?
Yes, and again, just to be boring, information officers are the people who are within the ministries and the departments of public entities.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't apply to private entities. Yes. Public entities who receive and deal with the requests.
Yes,
and what they do is, when they get the requests by email, they should respond between a certain time. And then within a certain time, they should have given you a full response. So the first one will just say, we've received your request and it's being looked into. And if it needs to be sent to, because if you could send it to the wrong ministry, of course, that could easily happen. This is something they've now done in the UK, but initially, if you sent it to the wrong ministry, they would just tell you, this is not for us, and say nothing. But they thought that was a bit naughty. So they've changed it there, and they've built that in here, that they should send it to the correct ministry, department, whatever, and they should tell you that even though you sent it to us, it's not for us to deal with, but we've sent it to the department, and this is the person you should call. So all those information officers have to be named people, and they have to have a deputy who also has the same powers, because if that person's away, you can't say, oh, we can't do it because this person's not away. There's a deputy. And so all of those people have to be trained in how to handle, how to respond, how to reject, how to accept. Because what's important about accepting, they shouldn't also give away stuff that should be confidential and not given out. So all of that, so it's quite a complex role.
Absolutely, and in Britain, if you do not do that, if you do not keep to the standards you agreed on, then you will be punished. There is no culture of impunity.
At all.
Our problem is you don't have that.
Because over there,
as long as I'm well connected, I
Yeah.
can get away with so much.
Yeah.
So here we've got, I think, two problems. The ministerial, departmental efficiency, how we do things, and the culture of secrecy, the attitudinal aspect as well.
Big time.
That's it.
That's a big
and then we are easily led by the person in power.
And this is
we're a
it.
very interesting lot,
Yeah.
really. Once I'm a minister, or I call myself whatever I want to call myself, give myself all these titles, and then when I deal with other people, I can even ask them to break the law.
This
They'll
is
do it for me.
This is it.
It's
The
an
minister says,
extraordinary
the minister says, I can't
mindset.
release this information.
That sort of thing.
You'll be in trouble if you do that. And so will the minister.
That's it.
You know?
So for a society, for our institutions to work, all of us must have integrity. I must understand my terms of reference. I must understand really my work, what is required of me.
Sure.
As they say, only lawful orders are binding.
This is it.
That's
and
it.
you've used the word binding.
Yes.
This very act says this law binds everybody.
Absolutely.
That is a public, from governments to ministries to departments. It binds everybody, right up to the president's office.
Absolutely. but because we are not like that, you see, it's only now that I think we're beginning to understand what's wrong with our societies, how institutions fail and the rest of it. We've got a scapegoat we call the government, but we are like that. This is really what our problem is. It's a societal problem that we have. That is why institutions are not working. You see, we confuse all sorts of things because my cousin there, or my brother, or this or that, all of these extraneous concerns. But to us, that is what it means to be a human being. So we've mixed the private and the professional, if you like. They just, so maybe it takes a process, few generations to separate the two. That's when really institutions can begin to work.
This is it.
That's really
so this one I'm very much looking forward
what
to
happens.
it's being implemented. Thank you very much, Ms. So even when they validate that roadmap, what we want to see is not its validation, but it being put into action, its implementation.
Working, it's operative,
Exactly.
it's active, people are using it. Fine, we'll disagree with all sorts of things, but that's why this sort of institution is there. Isn't it? And that's a healthy democracy. Can you imagine if we all agreed?
Hey, how boring would
that would be a democracy, a big cemetery.
Quite.
A big graveyard.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to story number 7, a very different story. We commemorated October the 24th as what? United Nations Day. And you know, the UN's been getting something of a rough deal recently. Lots and lots of people criticizing it. And sometimes we forget what else the UN does. Here's a mini reminder.
The Gambia became a UN member on September 21st, 1965. On United Nations Day, we celebrate the organization's unwavering commitment to fostering peace and safeguarding human rights worldwide. In support of this, the UN currently has more than 60,000 peacekeepers deployed across 11 missions worldwide. Through initiatives like the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the UN addresses critical global challenges including climate change, poverty, education, and equality. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948, continues to serve as a cornerstone for defending human rights globally.
Mr. Mboj, there we keep hearing about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the United Nations itself, the kind of successor to the League of Nations, as you very well know, being a student of history. And of course, the one who came up with the idea of calling this organization the United Nations was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Absolutely.
But fortunately didn't live to see it become what he dreamt that it would be. He died. But nonetheless, as I said in the lead up to that, we think about the big things, you know, the war in Gaza and all these intractable problems that the UN has not been able to solve. And when the criticism is aimed at it, it's usually about that. But then you have all the other things that they do, and they don't get enough credit for some of those, do they?
Where would the world be without the World Food Program?
SZ?
WHO,
UNESCO,
UNESCO, UNICEF, that sort of thing.
Quite.
Absolutely. Wasn't it the second Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld?
That's right.
The UN is not here to bring us to heaven,
Quite.
but to save us from hell. Can you imagine
Absolutely.
a world without the UN? You think things are bad?
Yeah.
Remove the UN.
Yeah. and sadly for him, he went to Congo to go and arbitrate the peace and died in a plane crash.
He died in a plane crash.
Quite.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sure. Today, the main question for the UN, or one of them anyway, whether for us, Africa, to have a permanent seat in the Security Council.
Yep.
And some might even say, perhaps more than that, would we have a veto power? This is about power. Just being a member of the seat, that's not really power.
Yeah, quite.
There's only the 5 have
quite.
power. When they say no to anything, it's no.
What is it?
They cannot even outvote you.
And
you know what I mean? I wish they could do that. That kind of thing amongst themselves, they'll vote. I think that would have been interesting.
That would have been good.
But no, just one veto, that's it. It kills it.
Yeah.
So there are certain reforms that perhaps one could do. But again, we must also sort of not forget the fact that ultimately it's about power.
Yes, indeed.
You do not have the power, not the economical, not military. You are not going to get it.
And
you don't have the power.
What's interesting is that when I was kind of discussing this before, when we were doing this story, it said that one of the reasons why China, one of the permanent members, has been pushing so much for Africa to get 2 seats is because when China was trying to get its seat, almost all the African countries supported it.
Absolutely.
And so they're kind of returning the favor.
Yes.
Say, you guys got us this seat. We owe you. You know, so people
but
tend
it also
to forget.
depended on what China did
indeed.
for them to earn it.
Of course.
You see, it's time to sort of let us move away from the silliness that's been around, you know, the rhetoric, African this, African that, whilst I am I'm sapping the energy of that land. You see, these are some of the consequences of it. You're not going to have power, and everything when it comes to world decisions, really, you wouldn't have the influence. So now we are beginning to pay the price for what the earlier generations of the corrupt leadership that we've had that has held us back.
Sure.
So this is it. You need to give yourself that voice, as it were, and so that people will take you seriously.
Indeed.
Take yourself seriously first. Then others will take you seriously. But this is going to be interesting. They'll probably just give us a seat. But no veto power.
With no power. Thank you.
But it's a good thing that we have the UN, no matter what.
Indeed.
No matter what.
Indeed.
So fantastic. Otherwise, God, it would have been, oh my God, Armageddon.
We would have gone to that hell that Hammarskjöld talked about.
Absolutely, we would go to that hell.
Thank you for that, Mr. Borge. And now on to something else. Of course, if you live in Gambia or pretty much West Africa, staple food is rice. But many of our countries are struggling with growing our own staple food. I wonder whether that's true in other parts of the world. Anyway, somebody is trying to do something about it. Have a look, have a listen.
The trainees include both Gambian and Senegalese farm operators. Each day, participants engage in theoretical sessions focused on specific equipment, followed by practical demonstrations. Jana Sanyang from the Casamance region in southern Senegal commended the effectiveness of the intensive training. The training is progressing well, with COPIA impacting valuable new skills. These advanced machines demand technical expertise, and since the training began, we have already made significant progress.
Yes, people might say, oh, your chairman, Mohamed Jah, is one of the people who's kind of working with these people. But nonetheless, it's a brilliant scheme. And it's the thing we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the maternal pods, about training people, giving them the right training to kind of be able to handle and maintenance and sustain all these fancy equipment that we're going to get.
That's it, and having a conveyor belt, as it were, perhaps some of these organizations or with these schemes, we will have a kind of education scholarship, training constantly. They're constantly training, absolutely, experts in these areas.
Yeah.
So this is what we need. We all know that the low productivity has been largely because of the low tech. There's hardly any
you know, we're still using stuff that other places that kind of shed 50, 60 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so this is the key. More of it, yes, training people and the sustainability aspect as well.
Huge.
Yes, we must emphasize banging on about it all the time. So this is what you need, and have a sustainable conveyor belt.
I think the conveyor belt of
experts.
that. Well, this is it. I think that's the crucial element of it. You can't just train
element.
one batch and leave it at that.
No way.
It has to be a continuous thing, because people come, they'll move on. Some might go off and do other things. What then? Does the project come to a standstill? No, it cannot. It has to carry on, and so the conveyor belt very much, constantly, every year, more people go, more people train. And so you never even have to think about it stopping.
If you imagine in every sector, really, they're sort of sponsoring courses, either in tertiary institutes or the university or whatever, but supporting courses that will really be training
and we've got all these TVET places, you know, springing up.
I think that could be very interesting between education, these institutions, and industries, together, aligning together so that you will teach them the right skills that you need for this to work and be sustainable in the long term. Stuff like that.
The perfect dream and the perfect way to end that one. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 9, penultimate story. Some young people recently held a forum on lead paint elimination. Why does that matter? What do you mean, why does it matter? Have a look, have a listen.
Lead poisoning is an invisible but preventable hazard which disproportionately affects the most vulnerable population, like us women and children. Despite its toxicity, lead continues to be found in various types of paint, particularly in low and middle income countries like the Gambia.
When we tested this 80 brand of paints coming into this country, we come to realize that 80% of the paints coming to the country have a high concentration of lead chemicals in our paints that we use. So we realized that there is a high concentration of 100,000 parts per million when the world has set a standard of 90 parts per million.
Mr. Mboj, it's the kind of thing, one of the reasons is they talk about low-income countries. The reason we suffer is because a lot of these paints where they have to extract the lead, they're more expensive. And so the cheaper ones where they don't, and we don't care because we look at our pocket. What can my pocket sustain? And these things are going to end up killing us.
But this is our problem when structures, when institutions don't work.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean?
Because if the rest of the world is saying this is not fit, why are we allowing it in here?
So this is the same old story, isn't it, really? When institutions don't work. That really should be our priority right now. Nothing else. You know, for the institutions to begin to work, then we will be protected.
Sure. I mean,
with the AKI,
you took the words right out of my mouth. I
Absolutely.
said 71 children had to die before we got serious about saying, and then even then, people are complaining. Oh, you know, all this testing is costing us, is costing that. But this one, what is beautiful about it, and it's the second time we've covered this because we think it's important, it's young people leading it. It's not even a government initiative.
Yes.
Very, very young people, young volunteers. They're the ones at the forefront of this.
Absolutely, and you hope that maybe it might involve some legislation. We might have to amend one law or another, and we make sure that we stick to the standards that we set. People who bring in these paints, how do you test them? They will come and tell you, the authorities will come and tell you, well, we don't have the wherewithal. There's no money, there's no machine, there's no this, none of that. So it's just, I just didn't know what to say. We know what we should do, but there will always be one reason or another why we cannot do it.
Well, this
is what they keep on telling us.
And these days with the internet, you can just look, oh, is this banned in other countries? Why is it banned? You know, and then, okay, we'll ban it as well. But yeah.
With the institutional weaknesses, really, what can one say? I mean, appealing to one's sense of morality doesn't do anything.
It never works.
It never works.
So keep on, young people. Raising the alarm. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to story number 10, our final story. Egypt, yes, the land of the pharaohs. just been declared malaria-free, the latest African country to get that. Have a look, have a listen.
Egypt's Health Minister Khalid Abdel Ghaffar described the WHO certification as one of the most significant moments in the nation's history. He told reporters receiving the malaria elimination certificate today marks not the end of our journey, but the beginning of a new phase. We must now work diligently to sustain our achievement by maintaining the highest standards for surveillance, diagnosis and treatment. Egypt's path to this historic milestone has not been without challenges. In 1942, malaria cases surged to over 3 million due to disruptions by World War II, including population displacement and medical supply shortages. The construction of the Aswan Dam in 1969 also posed new risks, creating breeding grounds for mosquitoes. However, by 2001, malaria was largely under control and the Ministry of Health focused on preventing its re-emergence.
There, Mr. Mbodj, we heard mention of the Aswan Dam, Gamal Abdel Nasser's great project, which was a transformative one, but it's one of the things that people criticize, the displacement. It meant there was a lot of stagnant water, ideal breeding ground for mosquitoes, and many people died as a result. But now, finally, Egypt has got that stamp.
Yes, the fifth country, isn't it? Fifth
African
African country to be so declared. I love what Ghebreyesus, the WHO.
Yes, when he was giving his statement.
That's Director General said. Malaria is as ancient as Egyptian civilization, but a disease that once afflicted pharaohs now belongs to history in the future.
I love that, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Quite.
This is it. This is what we want as well, isn't it?
This is it.
In this country, what do we need to do?
Well, this is it, and one of the reasons why I wanted it featured is because, again, an obsession of mine is that when you read the report of how they did it, it wasn't through using a vaccine. It was through cleaning up their environment, starving the breeding ground literally for mosquitoes, and that's how they've done it. So they talk a lot about cleanliness, they talk about waste management in the report, and I urge people to read it because it shows it can be done.
Oh, absolutely. The whole talk about a vaccine, this is just very
recent.
Just very recent. And people had conquered it before that.
Before that.
So it can be done. The doability of it, that's not in doubt.
Quite.
Whether the country has a character, the right leadership to successfully lead that sort of campaign and eliminate it, that's a different question. That's the problems that we have. Just as we said, that without the institutional solidity, as it were, in place, then you really cannot achieve things. This has been our problem. But I'm sure that sooner or later we will get there.
So yeah, so if you're a country that's afflicted by mosquitoes still, go and read the report on how Egypt did it, only because they're the most recent one, and you'll see it can be done, and it has been done.
That's it, and you realize that it's a long-term project. They've been working at it for 100 years, that sort of thing.
Right.
So all you think about is that, what is it that I can do today? What can we do now? And then building up, as it were, to whatever we want to achieve in the future.
We can dream, we can dream. Thank you for that, Mr. Mbodj. And that brings us nicely to the end of the program. Just leaves for me to say, Mr. Mbodj, thank you for your interjections. Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine, Eddie.
And thank you to Lamidi Sonko for the brilliant signing. And of course to you, the viewers, particularly if you were with us from Story 1. Until next week, goodbye.